Listen to this.
My name is Becky. I live in Sweden. I'm a social worker. And I want to use this opportunity to beg some of the NGOs working with women in Kenya, Burundi, and other countries in East Africa. Please talk to the young girls there. Talk to the young girls about this interracial marriage. They're getting married to men who are mentally deranged and they're destroying them. These are men with horrible fantasy. I mean, what my sisters are telling me, I don't think any normal man would do that to a woman in the other room. What they're doing even to their own children they're having with our sisters is mind-blowing that a father will violate their own child. I mean, you hear stories that you need to go and then take a week off before you come back and continue listening to that story. Please, NGOs around Kenya, working with children, the girl child, women, please take this up as a topic. Empower our girls. It must not be a European old man. It must not be a mentally deranged European trashy man with all kinds of horrible fantasy about black bodies to come there and pick one of our beautiful sisters and start violating. And because they're never going to get justice. They're never going to get justice. The journalists are not willing to write these stories. The social workers are not willing to be part of this. They're interested to remove the children because that's their customer too. Their court is never going to give them justice. The law enforcement officer just know that it's just one of our crazy brother that it is what it is. That's how the way our people are. So please, NGOs, especially in Kenya, take this as a topic. Talk to our women. Talk to my beautiful daughters. Talk to my beautiful sisters. To think twice. To look at a lot of issues before they get into interracial marriage with Europeans. It's horrible. The stories are not pleasant at all.
Once again, as I always state, your genealogy is connected to your psychological state of mind. It is so sad, and I don't even want to imagine, but given the historic behaviors and the stories that have come out over the years and what they have done to us during slavery, I know for a fact this entity, this beast, has no compassion. He has no moral compass. He has no stop button on how far he is willing to go when it comes to the abuse of women and children. Women and children.
Welcome to my show. It's me, Priti Yatri, bringing you the top news from all around the globe that matters the most. So let's start with it. India's image transformation begins with Sudha Murthy. Well, a deeply personal story from Sudha Murthy highlights how global perception of India has evolved over decades. Her experience reflects India's journey from doubt to global admiration. Emotional speech inside Rajya Sabha. Well, Murthy used budget discussions to narrate India's changing global respect story. Her speech blended personal memories with national transformation. 1979, a humiliating US immigration experience for her, she recalled facing disbelief about India's progress during her first US visit. The moment became a turning point, shaping her national vision. Well, a life-changing lesson from N.R. Narayan Murthy here. She told her respect must be earned through contribution and nation building. Now that message became their lifelong mission. Birth of tech giant Infosys. Well, the couple helped build one of India's biggest global technology brands. Infosys became a symbol of India's rising IT power. India's global perception completely reversed. Later visit to America showed admiration replacing earlier skepticism. Well, Indian professionals are praised as innovators and industry leaders. India's growth linked to leadership era of Narendra Modi. Murthy hinted that consistent governance helped reshape the global trust. She emphasized transformation requires long-term policy focus. Surprising incident linked to Rishi Sunak. British immigration officials, they were stunned by Murthy's connection to Sunak. It highlighted India's reaching top global leadership role. Symbolic address at 10 Downing Street. Well, Murthy listing the UK Prime Minister's residence as her address shocked the official. Well, the moment symbolized India's rising global influence. America conducts secret military energy mission. Well, the operation involved advanced nuclear microreactor transportation. It signals future battlefield energy independence strategy. Mission led by United States Department of Defense. Well, the Pentagon partnered with scientific agencies for the historic test. It demonstrates growing integration of military and energy technology. Scientific support from the US Department of Energy here. The reactor represents future mobile power solution for combat zones. Officials called it a major defense innovation milestone. Reactor transported from Mark Air Reserve Base here. The microreactor began its journey from a very high security military location. Well, its movement was closely monitored for safety and logistics testing. Destination? Hill Air Force Base. Well, the transfer tested rapid deployment capabilities for advanced nuclear system. On the other hand, officials confirmed the reactor carried no nuclear fuel. Technology built by Velar Atomics. The company designed compact reactors for military and emergency power supply. Experts believe that microreactors may redefine the battlefield logistics here. Global tension intensifies in Strait of Hormuz. That's right, nearly 20% of global oil trade passes through this particular narrow waterway. Any conflict here could disrupt the global fuel markets instantly. Military drills by Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, Iran conducted full-scale naval combat exercises. Missile launches and swam boat tactics, they were demonstrated here. Political rhetoric linked to Donald Trump. Iran views US policies during Trump's tenure as key escalation drivers. Here, military drills are seen as strategic defense messaging. Controversial speech by Lindsey Graham here. Graham called for stronger pressure against Iranian leadership. His remarks triggered major diplomatic controversy. Target of political pressure, Ali Khamenei. Graham suggested leadership removal could end the regional confrontation here. Now, such statements cross sensitive diplomatic boundaries. Massive US naval operations near Venezuela. Well, the Caribbean deployment reportedly cost nearly $3 billion. Well, the mission focused on surveillance and regional security pressure. India intercepts tanker in the Arabian Sea. 3 suspicious vessels, they were stopped near India's western coastline. Investigation suggests links to sanctions violating oil transfers. Operation conducted near Mumbai. Well, Indian Maritime Forces launched a high alert security operation. The seizure highlighted India's growing naval monitoring strength. Denial issued by National Iranian Oil Company. That's right, Iran rejected allegations linking the tanker to its exports. The denial intensified global energy trade tension. Energy crisis escalates in Cuba. Fuel shortages triggered transport collapse and airline disruption. Well, the crisis is linked to international sanctions and supply blockade. Diplomatic negotiations led by Marco Rubio here. Back-channel talks aimed at balanced pressure with diplomatic engagement. Washington seeks political and economic reforms in Cuba. Russia's strategic move under Vladimir Putin. Military cargo flights to Iran sparked the global security concern here. Analysts fear defense coordination between Moscow and Tehran. China's expanding influence under Xi Jinping. China is strengthening energy and defense ties with Iran. Now, this signals shifting the global power alignments. Heavy cargo aircraft reportedly flew towards Iranian territory. Flight tracking data raised the alarms among the defense analysts. Strategic landing near Payam Airport. While the airport is closely linked to Iran's defense logistics network, experts believe that the flights may signal accelerated military coordination. The base was quiet, the flags were still flying, the soldiers, they were still there. And then suddenly, they were not. In the dusty battlefield of Syria, another dramatic shift is unfolding, not with explosions, not with missiles, but with something equally powerful. A silent withdrawal. American troops are pulling back again, this time from a second strategic base deep inside a region many call Iran's extended backyard. And the timing? Well, fast, unpredictable, and raising a lot of serious questions across the Middle East. Just days ago, Washington confirmed that it was stepping away from the Al Tanf garrison, a crucial outpost sitting near the tense border triangle connecting Jordan and Iraq. Now, another base in northeastern Syria is changing hands. And this time it's happening through coordination and not through confrontation. According to the Syrian Defense Ministry, their forces have officially moved in. Yes, Syrian troops are taking control, and surprisingly, this takeover is happening with American approval and their planning. No gunfire though, no resistance, just a carefully managed exit. But make no mistakes here, behind this calm transition lies a storm of strategic consequences, because every American step backwards, it creates little bit of space for somebody else to step forward. And in Syria, that space is never empty for long. While ground troops are reducing their footprint, Washington insists that it is not abandoning the battlefield. In fact, the United States Central Command claims the opposite here. They say American forces have launched more than 30 airstrikes this particular month alone, targeting militants linked to Daesh. So, what are we seeing here? Not a full withdrawal though, not a complete retreat, but a shift in strategy. From boots on the ground to firepower from the sky. And this particular shift comes at a very delicate moment as well, because Syria itself is changing. Inside the capital, Damascus, political winds are moving, alliances are evolving, power balances are quietly reshaping. But perhaps the biggest question mark hangs over the Kurdish-led forces in northeastern Syria. For years, these groups fought alongside the US against the extremist fighters. They became Washington's strongest local partner over there. Now, as American troops step back, many are asking, will these Kurdish forces be left exposed? Will new regional players fill the vacuum here? And who truly controls Syria's future security map? Because Syria is not just a country recovering from war here. Syria is a country which is a chessboard where global powers, regional rivalries, and local militia, all pieces move very carefully and sometimes silently. For Iran, every American withdrawal can look like an opportunity, but for Syria's own government, it signals restored control. For Kurdish fighters, it raises fear and uncertainty, and for the US, it reflects a larger shift away from the endless ground wars towards calculated, distant military pressure.
everybody. Thank you for being here. Just afternoon today, a gentleman parked in the 100 block of Maryland Avenue in a white Mercedes SUV. He exited the vehicle. He exited the vehicle with a shotgun and began running towards the Capitol up the walkway just behind me. And as he approached the Capitol, Capitol police officers observed this individual, challenged him, and ordered him to drop the weapon and get on the ground, which he did comply with. He was then taken into custody by United States Capitol Police. I think it's also important to note that this individual had a tactical vest on. He also had tactical gloves, and when we looked in the vehicle, he had a Kevlar helmet and a gas mask in the vehicle. He was also, like I mentioned earlier, the shotgun was loaded. He had additional rounds on his person.
All right, guys, we got two situations going down here. One is affecting millions of people in at least two states right now, New Mexico and Texas. There are alerts saying that there are life-threatening particles in the air, so toxic air spreading across these areas. Now, this is southern New Mexico going into Texas, around the El Paso region specifically. The reading that you see right here of hazardous at the highest level, it'll even show you. This is El Paso. You can go to AirGov and you can type in all the different cities and it will tell you the warning for that city currently. So all these people told to go in, lock the windows. And again, if you've got anything circulating outdoor air inside, you may want to shut that off as a precaution, because you don't want to suck all these particles into your home unless you have a for sure way to filtrate this. So this is big time in terms of the particles in the air, literally millions of people being told to use caution right now. Then we also have in DC what's being dubbed as a massive ecological disaster. Trump saying that it's the Dems' fault, but Maryland had a sewage pipeline that collapsed, and all this goes into the Potomac River, and this is literally a super crappy situation that I'm sure does not smell good up in the area and is causing a lot of problems. So tons of people put on alert because of that. So you've got multiple situations here going down I wanted to make you aware of. If you're in those areas, let me know what you're going through in the comments section. And if you got anything to get to me, let me know. Dabu78.
The first solar eclipse of the year takes place on Tuesday, but only 2% of the world's population will be able to see it clearly. Most of those will be in the Antarctica, home to research stations and wildlife. It's an annular eclipse, which takes place when the moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, but is too far away to cover it completely. The result is what is known as the dramatic ring of fire, with the bright circular edge of the Sun all that one can see. It will also be partially visible to observers in southern Africa and the southern tip of South America. In South Africa, the maximum eclipse will be in the early afternoon, with the National Space Agency warning people to use protective eyewear. Solar eclipses happen a few times a year, but are only visible from places in the path of the moon's shadow. As for the full solar eclipse, due to the remoteness of the Antarctic, it will be visible to more penguins than people.
The only total lunar eclipse of 2026 is coming overnight March 2nd to 3rd, and about 2.5 billion people can see at least part of it. A total lunar eclipse happens when the Earth passes between the Sun and the Moon, casting a shadow that turns the Moon dark red, why it's also called a blood moon. Unlike a solar eclipse, you don't need special glasses to see it. If you are in much of the United States, Canada, or Mexico, plus parts of East Asia and the Pacific, you have a shot at seeing totality, although some places will see the moon set during the event. Totality runs from 11:04 p.m. to 12:02 a.m. UTC, which stands for Coordinated Universal Time, the standard global clock used for astronomy. Don't miss it. The next total lunar eclipse isn't until 2028.
A shocking broadcast, a televised threat, and a region holding its breath. Well, tensions between Iran and Israel may have just crossed into a far more dangerous psychological battlefield. Not on the ground, not in the air, but on television screens, watched by millions. It all began with a broadcast that stunned viewers across the Middle East. Iranian state television aired something that looked straight out of a war movie. A graphic, a list, a crosshair placed over the faces of some of Israel's most powerful decision makers. And wait, among those shown was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Also featured senior intelligence and military leadership, including the head of Israel's intelligence agency, David, and other top defense officials as well. In fact, the images, they were dramatic. The message, even more chilling. And then came the words that sent shockwaves across diplomatic circles. The presenter reportedly spoke directly in Hebrew. That's right, delivering a message that sounded less like propaganda and more like a warning. Well, the warning suggesting that Israeli leaders should prepare and wait for the future retaliation. The mention of drone retaliation added another layer of psychological warfare here. But you know why now, and why escalate messaging at this exact moment? Because behind the closed doors, diplomacy and military planners, they are colliding. That's right, reports from CBS suggest that US President Donald Trump has been privately discussing potential scenarios with Israeli leadership. According to those reports, Washington may support fresh Israeli military strikes if negotiations with Iran collapse. Now that revelation has dramatically raised the global anxiety level because it signals two parallel tracks that are unfolding at once. That's right, diplomatic talks trying to avoid the conflict and military preparations, that is just for the war, right? And history shows that when both tracks run together, the risk of sudden escalation grows sharply. Now, inside Israel, such televised threats are being seen as psychological pressure tactics. Displaying enemy leaders on screen with targeting symbols, it's not just messaging. It is designed to show capability, to create fear, to signal readiness here, and perhaps to influence the ongoing political and military calculation. Now, inside Iran, the messaging, it carries a different tone. Officials have repeatedly warned that any strike on Iranian territory or its missile program would trigger retaliation across the region. Not limited, not symbolic, but potentially widespread. And that is why global observers are watching every signal carefully, because modern conflict is no longer just about missiles being launched. It begins with signals, threat narratives, and media messaging. Psychological warfare often becomes the first battlefield before the physical one. And the timing of this broadcast is also deeply sensitive. Diplomatic engagement between global powers and Tehran is approaching a crucial phase. If talks succeed, tensions may cool, but if talk fails, military escalation risks growing dramatically. And the biggest fear right now, that one message, one strike, or even one misunderstanding could trigger a chain reaction. A reaction that would not remain limited to one country. A reaction that could spread across the entire Middle East, affecting global energy market, military alliances, and civilian population.